Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name is Sean Wascrew. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels, and we are here to talk about 5 more movies that came out during the weekend of October 22nd through October 24th. This is a list. Not as horror. I mean, you got your horror movies, but it's not like your big horror movies. It's kind of like you got your like niche horror, and then you got like your horror action kind of film.
Yeah, I found in recent years it seems like more and more if they're going to come out with a movie for Halloween time, they release it like mid to late September, so it has like a month to play, and so by the time you get to this point in October,
or it comes out like right on Halloween week,
yeah,
which has one good week of appeal, and then after that it's like, why are we going to see a horror
which
film?
Actually describes most horror films anyway. So
very, very true. But we are going to be starting out with Brian's pick. This was a first time watch for me. I always know I'm in for something when Brian immediately goes, now give this movie a chance before we even start watching the movie, which makes me go, oh, great. So this is not going to be good, but we're going to go ahead and talk about it. We are talking about the 2015, I wouldn't even call it a horror. It's an action thriller, The Last Witch Hunter. The Last Witch Hunter came out October 23rd, 2015, had a budget of $90 million, had a weekend opening of $10.81 million. It was number 4 its opening weekend, had a finished box office of $146.93 million, $27.36 million domestic, $119.56 million international. I think I've said this on the show before. If not, then it was definitely when you and I were talking. Outside of Fast and the Furious, XXX, and Riddick, I just don't really care for, I guess, Guardians. I don't really care for Vin Diesel in movies.
Well, so Vin Diesel, I think most of the times when he makes a movie these days, he makes a movie with like a franchise in mind. So basically, if it works, it becomes this franchise, like, what Fast and the Furious or XXX or Riddick or whatever like that. And when it doesn't work, it becomes a one-off movie that's largely forgotten about. Last Witch Hunter didn't do well, obviously. I mean, it made over $100 million, but as you can see, the vast majority of that was made overseas, where they just love Vin Diesel. I actually quite enjoyed this movie. I actually wouldn't mind if it had become a franchise or at least had a follow-up of some kind. It's directed by Breck Eisner, who is the guy who did The Crazies, the remake that we liked so much.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel, I think, does a decent job. It's got a great supporting cast, which has Michael Caine, has Elijah Wood. It has Rose Leslie from Game of Thrones, is what you'll probably most know her from. Actually, might be about the only thing most people know her from, because
I would say for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, she's did some other like small films, but otherwise her career never really took off the way I kind of thought it would, but it didn't. But this is a movie, I compare this movie a lot to Constantine, not necessarily in the quality wise, but just in the fact that it has the same kind of feel to it as far as its supernatural action thriller, but it also like creates like this whole world. And that's one thing I really love in movies, whether it be Constantine or John Wick or whatever, where, besides the story that you're watching, it kind of gives you this whole background of like this whole other world that's it's already living in. And I think this movie does a great job establishing that without a whole lot of exposition and things like that. There's a couple scenes of exposition, obviously, like every movie. But I mean, just between the interaction of the characters and what you do see of them, they have this whole history of the humans versus witches and how this truce has been called. And now they actually work together to kind of, try to keep the rogues from causing trouble amongst them. There's a whole thing with the Dolans who are like Michael Caine is Dolan. He's basically the person he's the 36th Dolan. He's like the guy who takes care of Vin Diesel's witch hunter. And then he's going to be succeeded by the 37th Dolan, which is Elijah Wood. But it's a movie that, like I said, it just kind of creates this whole world. It's fun to live in. The action scenes, I think, are good. I think the special effects are very well done. I love the way the witches are portrayed in this movie. This is my kind of witch movie, where it's like this and like Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, and another one that came out around the same time kind of had that thing where it's not green skin people, it's not the cackling funny people like Hocus Pocus or something like that, but it's kind of like that. It's more of a dirty kind of gnarly looking witches. And I really like that atmosphere.
Yeah, there was the main witch when she reappears midway through the film. I loved that her like ponytail was a spinal cord. Like I was like, ooh, that's actually pretty badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this kind of movie, it's and like you said, how it builds its own little world and stuff like that. It's one of those things where if you're on board with that kind of world building, then Last Witch Hunter is going to be incredibly intriguing. If you're not on board with that, where they're not explaining a whole, like they're explaining stuff, but they're not like, exposition dumping like Lord of the Rings or something like that, and you're just kind of go, well, wait, why is this? Then you're just going to get frustrated as the movie goes on. But I mean, I think, like you said, they do a decent job. It just all kind of depends on the mood you're in when you watch it. Because Vin Diesel's not doing a bad job. It's nowhere as bad as Babylon AD.
Oh no.
No. So he's Vin Diesel, but
I would even call this better than his Riddick movies, honestly.
Yeah, I would honestly agree, because I'm not a fan of the Riddick films, really. But I mean, he's doing fine in the film. He's kind of like the witch version of the Boogeyman, because he hunts the witches and stuff like that. So witches are terrified him, and they all want to take him down and stuff like that. I do wish they would have given Elijah Wood more to do in the film, because I thought he was going to kind of be like the Rose character in this, where he was going to be like the sidekick who goes on the missions and stuff, but he kind of just disappears until like near the end of the third act, and you're like, oh wait, Elijah Wood's in this film, I forgot about him, kind of thing. But I think this movie, more so than anything else, is kind of more of a spotlight on Rose, because people only know her from Game of Thrones. And of course, I mean, there was throughout the entire film, I was waiting for her to go, "You know nothing," to I forgot, was it Kraylin? Is that Vin's name in this film? Kraylin or Krayler?
I just made me forget it. It is Calder.
Calder. I was waiting for "You know nothing" Calder, but we never got that. But I mean, she's solid. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I kind of was expecting her to have more of a career out of this, but then she married Kit Harington, and I guess she's just fine with just hanging out at home and collecting Game of Thrones money.
She is in the long shelved Death on the Nile. It's maybe ever coming out.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see her again here shortly. But I mean, action wise, I mean, I guess I'm an easy mark when you light swords on fire, because I just think that's always like the coolest visual. And the one thing that I said, like literally like during the flashback, which you defended the flashback from before I even got to see it, like, don't make fun of Vin Diesel's beard. I get it. It looks bad. I was like, I didn't think it was the worst.
It honestly didn't look as bad as I thought I remembered it looking. Yeah.
I was like, he's fine. Like, you were already like, don't make fun of it. I was like, okay. But like literally, like as I was watching, what was the very, very first thing I said when I saw Vin Diesel in the flashback?
That he should have been Kratos in God of War.
Exactly, because as I was watching, I was like, he would have been the perfect Kratos. And we both said, well, he's too old to do. Well, he would be old if they're doing like the God of War currently out. But he would be the perfect Kratos. And watching the flashback scenes, I saw that, and I was just, and it kind of made me go, this is what a God of War movie could be. And I mean, granted, it's only like a 5-10 minute flashback scene, but I enjoyed that more than the present day stuff, because the present day, it's either really cool when they bring the magic stuff to the modern day, or it's just really meh. And to me,
also that 5-10 minute prologue is kind of the action that kicks everything off.
Well, yeah,
and a good chunk of the current day movie is like more like investigating things. So.
Exactly, and that was the thing, is like when it's in modern day, it's just kind of meh. And granted, I had worked all day, and I came home and we watched The Stinker, and then we immediately watched this. So like halfway through the middle of this film, I was starting to like doze. And it wasn't because it was bad. It was just kind of like, it's not keeping my attention with the action. But then when the action picks up, I was there for. But the action sequences with Vin and the witches are solid. They're very, very solid. So it's one of those films where I did go in with the lowest of expectations, but I think it was a decent film. Could it have better legs if they would continue with the franchise, because they were building it towards future installments, and it just never happened? Absolutely. It being a one-off, it just kind of feels like not necessarily a missed opportunity, but that maybe they didn't have the right mindset of how they wanted to finish the film out, because it is very like they're planning to do sequels, and then it just never happened.
But yeah, I think if it had done better, I think they would have been able to make sequels just fine. But like I said, when it didn't and there wasn't a sequel, I think a lot of people just were like, oh, well, don't bother watching it then, because it's.
Well, I think it's one of those things where Vin, I think it's more like Vin is like, If Vin's like, did this make $1 billion or over $600 million? No, then I don't want to do it. Unless it's like a pet project like Riddick, where he's like, he just loves doing Riddick movies. Because I mean, it's just and I think that's just more of a Vin thing than anything else. Is he's like, oh, I could make Last Witch Hunter and not make anything, or I could keep doing Fast and Furious movies and make billions of dollars every time it comes out. But yeah, I mean, it was a decent film. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, which is the most important thing. And in terms of Brian picks, the score wasn't bad. So. Anything else you want to add for Witch Hunter?
No, although it is not available for free anywhere right
now. Okay, so yeah, so if you guys want to rent it, you can rent off, Prime or pretty much Vudu or anywhere else where they're doing rentals. Moving on to my pick, I picked a dramedy of the 90s that I think I haven't watched it probably in 20 years, to be honest. So it was a nice revisit. But I remember really, really loving this film when it came out. And we are talking about the 1998 film Pleasantville. Pleasantville came out October 23rd, 1998, had a budget of $60 million, had a weekend opening of $8.85 million. It was number one its opening weekend, its only week at number one, and a finished box office of $49.8 million, $40.58 million domestic, and $9.22 million international. This movie to me, and going all the way back to our very, very first episode, I mean, it's not the same kind of film, but I get like Big Fish vibes with this film. It's just, it's a nice film. I think it's got a great cast, and it's also got, I wouldn't say hidden meanings because it's clearly out there what's going on during it, but I think it's one of the most beautiful looking films. Cinematography wise, this film is gorgeous, and especially like as I was watching this movie, I remember because you and I we've done this. We'll go and we'll watch, like, me more than you. I'll watch like Cinefix, and they'll have like top 10 blah 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 blah, and usually they'll show like 100 videos or 100 movies in there instead of just 10. And as I was watching Pleasantville, there were so many scenes that I'm like, I remember seeing that recently. I remember seeing that, and it's because it's gorgeous, especially the scene in the park where it starts to rain. That scene, that whole like 5 minutes is, to me, cinematography masterpiece in terms of the way things look, the way they mix the grays and the blacks and to just actual color, and just the transitions from the black and white to the color is gorgeous. Tobey Maguire is pre-Spider-Man, so he was a relative unknown outside of like a few films. I think Tobey Maguire does a solid job in the film. Reese Witherspoon was probably, I guess, the biggest name at that point because she was on the up and coming from like Cruel Intentions and stuff like that. You got William H. Macy, you got Joan Allen, who was just coming off of Face Off. I just really, really enjoyed this film. Paul Walker, who was a relative unknown at the time, is in it as well. And there was also like other people who were just like random like townspeople. I was like, oh, there's Maggie Lawson, there's Mark Lucas. I was like, I didn't realize that they were in these movies. But it's corny, but it's supposed to be corny. And I didn't realize how sexual it was until I rewatched it. Which for a PG-13, there's like nudity, and it's very sex oriented. And like younger me didn't really pay attention to that or see that. But older me is like, wow, this is way more sexual than I thought, and I don't hate that. But it makes total sense. You're going from like the 98 back to like 58. What's the teenager's gonna do? Yeah, Reese Witherspoon definitely playing the slut character in this, which is something you don't ever really see her play. So it's definitely something out of her norm. But I really, really enjoy this film. I think Jeff Daniels is awesome in this film. I love Jeff Daniels' character in this film. Brian, what are your thoughts on Pleasantville?
This is one I didn't remember real well, although I had seen it back when it first came out. And then, like you said, it's not the kind of movie that has like a big cast of stars, because Tobey Maguire was still up and coming. Reese Witherspoon, actually at this point, she hadn't even done Cruel Intention yet. She had like
I thought this was after Cruel.
This is a year before.
Oh,
so she had done like Fear. She had done, I don't know if you saw Freeway, some stuff like that. But she still hadn't even done like a really big film, unless you count Fear, I guess. But that, even like you said, the character, the whole town is populated with character actors like, Jeff Daniels, who never really stars in movies much, but when he does, he's usually supporting roles. JT Walsh, I love everything he does. Stephen Tobolowsky, who I love in everything he does. Just a lot of these character actors, the kind of guys you're like, oh, I know that guy, but I don't know his name. I mean, well, most people don't know his name.
Yeah.
And then Joan Allen is the mom, who actually is from my area here, so we know her real well. So it's got a great cast across the board. I actually liked this movie a lot more in the first half, when it was more of a lighthearted comedy.
More fantastical and less.
Yeah, these kids were trapped in the past and kind of showed you all the funny things of what their lives are like versus what it's like them trying to live in this 50s idyllic kind of town. And the movie almost seems like it's starting to kind of wrap up, and then you realize like we're like halfway through it, because it's just like kind of almost a dark turn. It becomes more dramatic, with the people in the town that don't like the change that's happening, and there's these people getting the diners getting trashed and things like that, and she's getting harassed on the street, the mom is. And
yeah,
and so I mean, it's still a good movie after that, but I think I liked it a lot more when it was more of a lighthearted film. Not that it made it bad, it just made it different than kind of what I was looking for. I'm not generally a fan of Tobey Maguire. I think his Spider-Man is the worst ones, by the way. Well, even if you don't think his films are, he's definitely the worst actor. He's not a good actor. And Reese Witherspoon is very hit or miss for me. I like her in some movies and can't really stand her in other ones. But as the two leads, they were great. I loved seeing that the repairman, or whoever it is that gives him
Don
the
Knotts.
load is Don Knotts. I thought that was kind of cool to have, somebody like him play that role. The cinematography, as you said, is because the use, when most of the film's in black and white, and the way they used color and how color showed up to different people. And although it was kind of inconsistent rules as to what would set it off for an individual person, what would make them either see color or turn color, I kind of liked that it was kind of like individual to each person. It wasn't just a set,
To me, I think it was more when they went against their norm is when their color changed. Because like
it was like for some people, it's like some kids like they'd had sex and suddenly they saw color, but like Paul Walker didn't as soon as he had sex, so it wasn't immediate for him.
Yeah, well, I think that was just more or less because Reese kind of jumped him, and that, so it's like it wasn't like he was like just
that's supposed to happen. It is.
Yeah, I think I'm sick. I love one of my favorite little moments of Paul Walker, because it's such a doofus response, but it's such like this is like not the best, but like this is such Paul Walker in a nutshell, is when she's like, you can pin me if you want. He's just like, how would you pin me? It's such
he really does fit that role so well. He kind of has that, that Leave It to Beaver kind of golly gee, kind of
exactly
air to him.
But I mean, it's one of those things where I think, and through the film, is like Tobey Maguire, he was one of the very last ones because he was still playing the part for the most part. But when he attacks a guy, which his character in general, not Bud, but his character David, wouldn't do that. That's when he turned. When Reese Witherspoon was the slut and she was still being the slut back then, it wasn't until she started to actually play into the role of Pleasantville, like being a smart girl reading books, where she went against her norms, when she changed color. Same thing with Joan Allen, or even William H. Macy, where he finally shows general emotion to Joan Allen. That's when he changes. And it's all about how I think their colors change when they change their personality, or they go something against their character in a sense. And then the rest of the world, as people are starting to do things, it grows, which, yes, in terms for most of the people there, it's having sex. Or an orgasm in terms of Joan Allen, which, even that part of the whole fire, it's just like, I was like, that's on the nose, but it's good, but yeah, Don Knotts is great. Like, I love when he's just like, I need to leave. You made me upset. It's just like, walks off. It's like, I loved all that. The only thing that makes no sense to me is why Toby would have gone back home at the end of the film. I don't. They're like, dude, like I can see Reese going back home, but Toby, it's like, dude, you got Marley Shelton, and
he has this like, he loves it in this town. He loves the atmosphere of this town. He doesn't like his life back there, and if they had even played it up like he missed his family or something like that, but they didn't even play that up. So
yeah, they don't really give enough reason out except for his best friend. There's really no reason for him to ever go back. And it'd be one thing if they did like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, where the Bud and Mary Sue got transferred into the real world, and they needed to swap because it wasn't right. That'd be one thing. But that's the other thing too. Is like, what happened to the Bud? And
That's the only time you'll ever hear Sean say they should have done like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Yeah, exactly. Because I hate that film. But it's just it'd be one thing if they did it like that, but they didn't. But that's the only part that makes no sense, is that Bud would go back, because he had really nothing going for him back there. I mean, his Saturday night was, let's watch the Pleasantville Marathon. Granted, he was trying to win $1,000, but I think that was just more of a bonus. I think he was going to do that because he said he waited a year for this, and he studied it like we do for movie trivia, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he really didn't, like, there he was, not a god. I mean, to them, they treat him like a god, because he could do books and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes back to living his normal life. But he made it seem like he could go back and forth. He's like, well, I'll come back, kind of thing. So I think more or less, wait, maybe he doesn't. So how's Reese Witherspoon going to come back? She doesn't have the remote, kind of thing. But I mean, it's still, I really enjoy, like, the basketball part of it was hilarious. Because all of a sudden they all have sex and they can't shoot hoops anymore.
Yeah, they make every single shot, no matter if he throws it back over his head, whatever. He throws it this way,
that was great.
in.
And then like that one part
where I love the way they stare at the ball on the ground, like, nobody touch it. Nobody touch it.
Yeah, they're just terrified of the first ever missed shot. I love the corners, or even like when Joan Allen's with Jeff Daniels and William H. Macy comes home and he just keeps going, "Where's my dinner?" And he stumbles into the boy and like he hasn't eaten in a week, like he's all weak and stuff, and they're all just like, "Oh my god, this is like the worst thing ever." It's like it's so hilarious. Yes, it does get a little too serious when it starts to make the in color people are coloreds and no coloreds allowed, which starts to hit, obviously the racial aspects of real life, which is kind of like, sadly, there are still no black people in Pleasantville, which also just makes it even more like, come on, could you at least done that at least? But they did it, but it didn't go like outside of like that one moment where they catcalled Joan Allen and then they attacked Jeff Daniels' soda shop. They didn't go too much further than that. Like they still kind of corralled it in a little more, but like they could have gone a whole lot worse than that. I'm glad they didn't. Yeah. But like all it took was a town hall.
There was all the book burning and stuff.
There was the book burning too. But I mean, it's one of those things where they have a town hall meeting. Tobey Maguire gives his monologue, which was a great delivered monologue by Tobey Maguire. For someone that you don't like as an actor, I thought he did a very, very solid job there. To basically just kind of
he was fine in this.
Fix everything in it. But yeah, like I really like this film. It's just a good film, and like I said, it looks gorgeous. From going from bland to Technicolor, as the wording they use for it, and just changing the facets of the world, and basically saying that like you can just stay this character, or you can learn that you don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to follow a certain script. Everything's different. Like, go your own path. You will grow as the days go by. Don't think you have to be this way, which is what he basically tells his mom at the end of the movie. I think it's a good message. I mean, you look at Reese Witherspoon from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, her whole life's drastically changed. And I just really, really enjoy this film. But Pleasantville is not on anything, right? No.
Nope.
We're doing good on picking things that people can watch for free. But next, we are going to go to our stinker film. This stinker film, I don't think you and I had heard any good things about this film. All we heard was the sequel is so much better than the first film. So we were really fully prepared to come into this and just hate this film. We are talking about the 2014 horror film, Ouija. Ouija came out October 24th, 2014, had a budget of $5 million, had a weekend opening of $19.87 million. It was number one its opening weekend and spent 2 weeks at the number one spot. It had a finished box office of $103.68 million, $50.85 million domestic, and $52.83 million international. And like I said, most people know not necessarily Ouija, but Ouija, Origin of Evil, because it was directed by Mike Flanagan, who's super hot right now in terms of horror with Haunting of Hill House, Blind Manor, Midnight Mass, Doctor Sleep, Hush. I mean, he's the new it factor in terms of horror. He did not direct this one, obviously, but a lot of people just shit on this film. So you and I fully were expecting this movie to suck, but that's not exactly what we got, was it?
No, well, I had apparently seen this back in 2015. I have it logged on Letterboxd. I don't remember it very well. I remember bits and pieces of it, I guess. But I think that's the whole problem, is this movie is just so completely forgettable. And we didn't hate this movie, and I don't even know if I'd call it a stinker necessarily. I think that what makes it a stinker, what makes it a stupid story, is the fact that it's based on a Ouija board. With the whole concept of a Ouija board is stupid. And the whole thing is like, obviously it's like you get together people and somebody pushes it while they pretend they don't. And the whole thing with the game is, oh, are you doing that? I'm not doing that. Ooh. Anyway, so the whole concept of that bothers me to start with. But the biggest thing with this movie is it's just, I think the reason I had it in my mind as such a stinker was it's just such the epitome of that 2000s or early 2010s PG-13 horror, where they're all kind of the same. You can't tell them one from another. They're largely, jump scares. They're largely bloodless. I mean, I think we decided there's 2 deaths in this movie on screen, and even those
don't count the
very
ghosts.
tame.
If you don't count the ghosts,
If you don't count the ghosts.
There's I think 4 deaths total, but only 2 you see you see completely death.
Right, and even those are not like violent deaths or anything.
There's a little blood, and that's
it.
it.
But so it's largely it's not there for the gore factor, which is fine. Not every movie has to be gory.
Yeah.
But the scares are largely jump scares. I mean, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. The cast is a bunch of unknowns. I really thought that I'd like seeing, I remember that person, that person, that person. I think we recognized one person in this movie.
No, I recognized, except for Lynn Shane, who's
Lynn Shane is in every horror franchise ever.
I mean, I recognized the main girl, which was
Olivia Cook, who
we know from Ready Player One.
Although she has a hideous birthmark, which makes her
she's
disgusting.
Hideous in Ready Player One. It's ridiculous. And then I knew the girl in the beginning, which was Shelley Henning.
That's right. You pointed out
from Teen Wolf.
And I recognized her from Unfriended.
Yeah, and Unfriended. I love her. It's just she just never does. She's never really in any big movies. I love her from Teen Wolf, which they're coming back to do I think a movie of that. So she'll be in that at least. But yeah, the rest of the cast was just more or less. What was it? Was it Simon Says? We were trying to basically figure out recasting. This one was more, who do these people look like? Because they all look like mutts of 3 different actors mixed into one. Olivia Cook is clearly Rachel Lee Cook's daughter. She looks like Rachel Lee Cook. I think her boyfriend was we had 4 different guys for her boyfriend.
He looked like John Bernthal, Breckin Meyer, and the other guy we didn't even know his name.
One guy from Can't Hardly Wait. I think it was Brandon Williams or something like that. And then her, not Shelley Henning, because Shelley Henning wasn't in it long enough for us to really start focusing on that. But the other girl, she was Mila Kunis mixed with I
think you said Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz. And then the other guy who was Shelley Henning's boyfriend was oh God, I said Casey Affleck. You said
I said Bill Skarsgård and who's the other person? I can't remember now. It was so perfect too.
Yeah, because you said it was this guy with Dear Evan Hansen wig.
You did have the hair.
Yeah, he had the hair. But yeah, we that's what we spent most of the movie doing. And her dad was Olivia Cook's dad was 5 different actors that just all look like the same kind of person.
Yeah. And once again, the movies, you're not holding your interest and you're just
well, no, that's we were. I felt like you and me for most stinkers, we were kind of film. We were paying attention to it. Normally we'll trail off and start talking about other movies and stuff as we're watching. I think you and I, for the most part, we were watching this not intently, but we were fixated on the film. And I mean, that's the problem. That, like you said, it's not a horrible horror film. It's just bland and unforgettable. It's that. The acting's not bad. It's more the delivery of the dialogue that was bad. I think we described it as it felt like a high school play where actors don't quite know how to deliver their lines with.
Yeah, it's very stilted. It wasn't an interaction. It was I say my line, now you say your line, now I say my line.
Yeah, and it's just and that's not necessarily a bad actor situation. That's a bad director not making them basically not sound stilted. That's a director problem. That's not really an actor problem. Obviously the older they are, the better they are at delivering the lines. And these are all teenage actors. So, they're going to read it that way. It's the director's job to go, I need you to give a little more. But the main thing is, like, yes, it's based around a Ouija board, which even then, the Ouija board is not the evil of the film. It's this whole other thing, and then you just are using a Ouija board to basically open the door. You can do that with, Paranormal Activity did that last week. But, every movie with a Ouija board, they always treat the Ouija board as that's, like, the evil object. It's like, that's not the evil object. That's just the thing that opens the door, and then they always fucking forget to close the door and a thing. But they follow the same tropes in every horror film. Like, oh yeah, let's go down by the pool. What do you think's gonna happen? Like, they teased that earlier in the film with the tarp. Like, you knew that was coming back around. And like, there's one part where one of the characters gets killed. And we're like, that wouldn't have killed her. Like, concussion, maybe a broken neck, definitely not a death blow. But and then even the twist. I think you and I saw the twist coming.
Well, honestly, it's like there is actually a decent twist, and
it wasn't a bad twist. It's just you and I are just so used to knowing.
It wasn't like predictable way off. It was like right before they revealed it, like, oh wait, I bet it's this, and it was like, yep, sure enough.
Yeah, and so like it's one of those things where I think this film gets shit on, not necessarily unnecessarily, but because it's not good, but it's also
in no way
like
a great film. No, it's just
not like the worst.
Horrible.
Yeah, like we've seen way worse horror films than this. I think this movie gets shit on.
We watched Paranormal Activity last week. We've seen worse.
Shut up. But it's, I remember people just going, Ouija is one of the worst horror films I've ever seen. It's like, what horror films are you watching?
Yeah, you haven't seen much then.
Yeah, because like we watched House of the Dead 2 weeks ago. That is a shit horror film. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those rarities where you and I watch a stinker and we're like, it's not good, but it's not bad. It's just, it is what it is. Are we going to remember it 2 weeks from now? Probably not. Which, you know what? If for a movie like this, that's probably the best you can do out of it. And it got a sequel out of it, a superior sequel, apparently, which I've never seen the sequel. You said you did.
I've seen it, but again, I don't remember that one either.
Yeah. I want to see it because I know Mike Flanagan directed it. But yeah, it's really not as bad as everyone made it out to be. I don't blame the cast or anything. It's just
the only problems this movie has, this movie really has, the same ones that every movie has. Where you just have kind of every horror movie like this is just kind of stupid characters doing stupid things. For a group of people whose friend just died, they're so quick to believe in the supernatural and the Ouija board, yet they're so slow to be like, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Well, yeah, there's like literally that one point where what was it, like they're all on the Ouija board and the lights all cut out, and like at that point, like you and I were like, we're done at that point. Like, come on, let's all sit back down and keep him. Like, no, at that point you close the door, you walk away, and then it's like the one point where she pulls out the Ouija board and you have like the little girl and then the mom coming at him, and like it's just a game. It's just a game. Like. Yeah.
Even after this, it's about it's not the kids playing. Even after it's become this thing with communicating with the other side, they're like, "Oh, we can't play the game anymore." Are you still calling it a game?
It's not a game. You opened a door. You need to close the door. But I think one of the main problems that maybe keeps it so bland is like even the story of the evil, which I know is what the second film was about, is the prequel of that stuff. It's not that. Like Lin Shaye, she does the whole monologue of explaining what's going on, but even then, like that whole storyline's not that impressive or exciting or whatever. It's just like, okay, mom did crazy stuff to the daughter, and daughter has powers. Okay, but we don't really get to see that because she's still just a random ghost, which I said this, I think at the end of the film, was like, this is an hour and a half, and Sam and Dean Winchester would have knocked this out in 20 minutes. Like, this is an easy, like, because they still followed the same, like, supernatural things, like burning and all that stuff. It was like, all they needed was a salt circle and fire, and this film would have been solved in, like, 20 minutes with Sam and Dean Winchester. Like, this is like pretty much every episode of season 1 of Supernatural. Like, they could have taken care of this with no problem. But yeah, it's not that bad. Ouija was that
Peacock.
Yeah, I thought it was Peacock. So if you guys want to check it out, go ahead. We're not going to say go out of your way to see this because it's not that bad, but it's not
worth seeing, but it's not worth trashing either.
Exactly. Going to our revisited film. This is a film that I love. I don't think Brian remembered it that much, which is why
I've come to the conclusion that I had not seen it.
You never seen it?
I don't think I had. When I watched this movie, I'm like, nope, nothing familiar at all.
See, I love this film, and I'll touch more on it as we get to it. But we are talking about the 1999 rom-com 3 to Tango. 3 to Tango came out October 22nd, 1999. Had a budget of $20 million. Had a weekend opening of $4.4 million. Number 8 its opening weekend, and had a finished box office of $10.57 million. This is right around that time frame, which we talked about a previous film this year, and the same thing, where they really, really tried to make Matthew Perry a movie star. I mean, you got Fools Rush In, which we talked about on our Valentine's Day episode. That was so long ago. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. You got this movie, 3 to Tango, and then he did the whole 9 yards, a whole 10 yards. I think you and I both said we love Matthew Perry. Except for the whole 10 yards, which is a train wreck. I like Fools Rush In, this film, and I like the whole 9 yards. I know you don't. This one, yes, by today's standards, is it offensive to homosexuals? Absolutely. But at the time, the jokes all were funny. They all made sense. And I think acting-wise was a decent little rom-com. I mean, basically you got Matthew Perry, who plays Oscar Novak. You got Oliver Platt, who plays his gay architect partner. I'm blanking on Oliver Platt's character name in the film. But they're basically Peter. And they're basically working to get this big budget project from Dylan McDermott. And he's got this mistress played by Neve Campbell. And basically he thinks that they're both gay, Oscar and Peter. And so he basically, to keep an eye on Neve Campbell, he basically makes Matthew Perry, who's the single one, watch her and like become best friends with her and keep an eye on her, make sure she stays out of trouble and doesn't cheat on Dylan McDermott's character. And thus you have the same. We've seen this story before, where guy pretends to be gay, falls in love with the girl he's supposed to be watching, and blah, blah, blah. Hell, Kick-Ass did that. I mean, that was even later with Kick-Ass, where he pretended to be gay. But I like, first off, Neve Campbell is adorable in this film. I love Neve Campbell in this movie. She is, like we said, the kind of adorable character that you and I like, the Anna Kendrick, the Haley Steinfeld, but she's a little more of a badass in this. But she's quirky and artistic and all that stuff, and I think Neve Campbell plays it great. Matthew Perry's basically being Chandler, because he basically only can play that kind of character. But that character works. That's why we love Matthew Perry, is because of his Chandler-esque. Oliver Platt is hilarious in this film because he plays a gay guy, but he's not playing the over-the-top flamboyant.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's kind of a badass gay guy. Like, he is a violent gay guy. Like, they're all laughing. He's like, which one do you want to get bitch slapped first? Or don't make me make you my prison bitch, which is a great line at the end of the film. He's kind of a badass character, and I love Oliver Platt's character, like especially the one time when Matthew Perry's like, I can't believe they're gay. It's ridiculous. He goes, I'm an asshole. Are you mad at me? He goes, I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to kneecap you. Like, it's just those little lines right there. I love Platt's delivery in this film. Like I said, I enjoy this movie. It's got a lot of stereotypical gay jokes in it, but of the time, I mean, a lot of films did that. But Brian, this was apparently a first-time watch for you. So what were your thoughts on 3?
Which was weird for me. I don't know. This is another one of those that I don't know how I missed it. It's just like, or if I saw it, I've just forgotten about it because nothing seemed familiar. But it's just like, right in that time period. This is what, 99, I think, like 2 years after Fools Rush In. This is exactly the kind of movie I went and saw all over the place. I like everybody that's in it, but I guess I just never watched it, or if I did, I don't remember it. But well, first of all, from the very beginning, you can tell this movie's so 90s. I mean, the soundtrack is full. It's like that you remember that resurgence of swing with
Oh,
Big
it's
Bad
because of
Voodoo
the
Daddy
credits.
and
The
Brian's Up
credits,
Orchestra and Mighty Blue Kings. They got the swing music going through the whole thing. There's even like a music video essentially over the end credits. It's just
which has nothing to do with the film whatsoever.
if you didn't know when this movie came out, you could watch the opening credits and or listen to the music or the opening or the closing and be like, okay, this came out right around this time, and you'd be exactly right.
They could have had Mambo #5 play on this. And it would've been
Basically, yeah. Matthew Perry is absolutely just playing Chandler, another version of Chandler, which is fine because we like that, you know.
except with red hair, and that was throwing me off the entire time.
Not just red, but it was like bad hair too.
Yeah,
it's like
the weird auburn
it
color.
felt weird, and some points I always thought it was a wig because it like looked extra long in the back for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know, it's a weird thing. But Matthew Perry, he's not one of these actors who's like a chameleon is going to play different roles. He's going to be playing basically the same person every movie, and you build a movie around that character, and it works here.
He's likable. Everything he's in, he's likable as hell.
And that's one of the things that Neve Campbell in this movie. One reason I did like this movie is Neve Campbell, who you mostly know her from movies like the Scream movies, things like that. She's often very
Serious
and dour and serious. And this movie, you get to see her happy and smiling. And I realized just how much I like her as like a happy character.
Oh, literally, the first scene is her like didn't she give like Dylan McDermott a raspberry? Like in the first scene with her, it's like
that's my whole thing. She's like smiling and happy through the whole movie, and she's peppy, and I really like seeing her like that, and I like her. Oliver Platt. Well, as far as the gay jokes, I don't even think it was. I don't think people would necessarily find the gay jokes offensive.
I think it's more or less when it comes out on the newspaper. And you see how the dad reacts.
Well, that was just it. There were not jokes like making fun of gay people or things like that. There's nothing derogatory about gay people. It was more just certain people's attitude, like oh no, you can't consider me gay. That'd be horrible. That'd be the end of the world if people thought I was gay.
Yeah.
Which and actually they play into that in that conversation with Oliver Platt's Pete. They play into that where he's like basically saying that, and he's like, oh, I'm an asshole for saying that, because even he realizes, you shouldn't think of it like that. So I don't think anybody would be offended by it. I think that there are people who like to get offended by anything who would jump on it, but it is what it is. Takes place in Chicago, which is always good for me. I like that about it. In the end, I think that it's a very formula movie. It's just like every other rom-com you've ever seen, but it's harmless. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's not going to make like my best of list or anything, but it was fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like whenever I think about Matthew Perry, this and Fools Rush In are the immediate two films I think about. Then it's the whole 9 yards. I just really enjoy Matthew Perry as a person. I mean, anyone who watches Friends, I think all like Matthew Perry, and I think I think they were really hoping to bank on Friends to sell this film, and it really didn't do that much, which sucks. But I mean, like this was, I think Scream 3 was like the same year, wasn't it? Was it Scream 3 '99?
I think so.
So I think this was Neve trying to like, I can do more than Scream. Like, let me do other things. Which
Scream 3 was 2000, so yeah.
2000, okay. So I mean, this is her kind of trying to do something different. Which, like you said, you liked her this way. I liked her this way. One character I think they actually took pretty good job of in terms of the gay side of things was Kevin, the football player. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't like try to make a big deal out of it, and they didn't like they didn't like try to make that a huge thing. Like he's a football player, he's gay. Like they kind of, like he's in the closet still, but they didn't make like a big deal like he's gonna come out. And also he didn't like really hide it really that well either. Like he hit on Matthew Perry, and then he hit on Oliver.
He did, and then I mean, there's a scene when Neve Campbell says to him, she's like, can you just not tell anybody about this because he's still trying to figure things out, and that's cool, but it's not like a big, And
if even that, but that's '99. That's like almost 20 years before Michael Sam came out as like the first pro football player who was gay. It was like this movie did this like way earlier, and I think they took care of it pretty well. We're not saying it takes a huge story arc. It's not a huge story arc or anything. I just think in terms of what the film was like they actually treated that character with respect.
Yeah.
In terms of that. And I mean, even where the third act goes with the award, I'll just say that. I think even Matthew Perry's thing, like his speech for it, I thought was also done really well. Can we also just little side note, the competition for the architecture? The other dudes design was shit. Like, it looked horrendous. Like, I remember when they, like, it's when they had made the models, and they go to there, everyone's like, that's just pieces thrown all over the place. Like, were they expecting that to be so?
Well, and also, from what I could tell, I mean, you only could get a brief glimpse of their model, but their model looked nothing like the VR thing that they showed him earlier.
No, it didn't. It did look nothing like it. And it just looked like, here's like a big triangle building here, and then there's just empty space. Here's another building over here, empty space. Here's another, like.
Meanwhile, they originally pitched him with a VR helmet where he's looking around. There's like a giant waterfall, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it looks nothing like it. Whereas like at least like Oliver Platt and Matthew Perry looks a lot like the same thing. But yeah, Three to Tango. It's a '90s rom-com with the kind of the misunderstanding joke that literally carries the whole film. But I like the cast. Dylan McDermott plays a good kind of asshole cheater guy, and then of course like the Neve Campbell's great, Oliver Platt's great, Matthew Perry's great. The rest of the cast around them are like the three buddies. They do their job. They don't overshadow Matthew Perry or Platt. They're there for the jokes. One of my favorite jokes is, like I said, when Oliver Platt goes, which one he wants to get bitch slapped first, and the little one's like, I'll go second. Like, I love just the delivery of that. I love that. And like they don't overtake anything. But that's another joke that probably will piss people off. Is like all of a sudden, like they're all terrified of Matthew Perry because he's gay, but they aren't terrified of Oliver Platt or anything. But it's either way, I think it's a solid cast. It's like I said, most people aren't going to remember it unless you're a Matthew Perry fan, like I was. So I remember Three to Tango. It's not on anything. It used to be on Netflix like all the time.
It's one of those things that pops up, I think, on a lot of places. Right now, it is not unless you have Stars. Yeah,
like I used to remember always seeing it pop up on like TNT, and like Fools Rush In was always on like TBS. Like they always kept them on separate channels. But yeah, so going on to our featured film, we are talking about an action classic that has spawned 4 sequels? 5? 4?
4.
I think 4.
Wait. 4.
There's 5 total, right?
Yes.
So 4 sequels. We are talking about the Sylvester Stallone action film First Blood. Not Rambo, First Blood. First Blood. First Blood came out October 22nd, 1982, had a budget of $15 million, had a weekend opening of $6.64 million. It was #1 its opening weekend, spent 3 weeks at the #1 spot, had a finished box office of $125.21 million, $47.21 million domestic, and $78 million international, which in 1982, that's a lot of money.
I was going to say, because foreign box office was not much of a thing before like late 90s.
Yeah. So, I mean, for 1982, that's a box office smash. Like, that's huge. So, yeah, Rambo. This first film, I think, is obviously the most serious film. It's probably the less action-heavy of the other films, because, when they started going to 2 and 3, that's when he started to become, like, this guerrilla, like, war Terminator guy, where he just went to places and just shot
unstoppable one-man army kind of thing.
Exactly. Which, I mean, he technically is a one-man army in this, but it's done in a whole other kind of thing. Like this, is it Wyoming? Is that the town? Like
Washington, I believe.
Washington. But yeah, I mean, he basically is a Vietnam vet, John Rambo, which anyone who knows Rambo, you guys know who Rambo is. But this is like his first introduction. He's just coming back. Is he just coming back from war, or is he just showing up into Washington randomly?
He's going to visit a friend who was in his troop. I don't think he's just back, but it hasn't been long.
Yeah, I mean, he's still kind of in the mindset, but yeah, he's trying to visit his friend. He finds out that his friend's dead. He's just walking through town, and what's his name?
Brian Dennehy.
Brian Dennehy. I almost said Brian Cox. I was like, that's not Brian Cox. Brian Dennehy's like the town sheriff, and basically immediately is like, I want you out of my town, because he looks at him as like a homeless hermit.
Drifter, vagrant. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. He's just going to cause problems, which of course, Rambo's like, I just wanted to go get some food, maybe a job, stuff like that. He's like, no, drives him off to the border of town and basically says, keep walking, don't come back, which he comes back. He gets arrested. And then that's basically where the film really kicks into high gear. This film's more, like I said, the dramatic side of like how, Vietnam, PTSD, treating war vets, kind of situation that it is just like a action heavy film like its sequels were. Before I get too far into my thoughts on it, Brian, what are your thoughts on First Blood?
I really like the First Blood. I mean, the Rambo movies, at least the first few, to some extent, I enjoy all of them. But I mean, like 2 gets it's actually written by James Cameron, and at that point, it basically became, by the second movie, is already a caricature of the original character. Because he was basically, like you said, the one-man army, but he's taking on this entire force. Now here, he's one guy like on the run from a group of people, like defending himself one by one. But in the other movies, he's just like mowing down like crowds of people.
Yeah.
Because 3 became even more ridiculous. 4 I thought was awful, and 5 was, I don't know why they were made.
5 was more, I think he just wanted to kill the Rambo.
Yeah, that 5 almost seems, Last Blood almost seems like a completely different, like a Sylvester Stallone straight-to-video movie that they slapped the Last Blood name on.
When I did the review on the channel of this, Last Blood to me was Rambo meets Home Alone.
Basically.
It is. It's basically him doing his best Macaulay Culkin, where he basically booby traps his entire plant, his entire, like, not yard, but like his house and his like
ranches. Yeah.
Exactly. He booby traps the whole damn thing, and a whole group of people just come in and get mowed down.
Yeah. So I mean, it became ridiculous. But like I said, that was by the second movie, it already became that. And I forgot until I went back and watched this one just how much I enjoyed this first one before it became like this caricature of it. I think that the sequels also give kind of this reputation of just violence and pure machismo.
Violence over substance.
Yeah, whereas this one, it really did have a story to it. Like the whole thing started, like you said, it's basically a guy who's come back from Vietnam, and so he's still dealing with issues, and that happens when the cops finally arrest him and they bring him in and they start like abusing him and stuff. He starts like having these basic flashbacks to Nam, and he flips out, and then it just builds from there. But I mean, it's a movie that actually has character motivations to it. It's got a story to it. Yes, a big chunk of the movie is him out in the wild. They're either killing people or just defending himself. But actually, he doesn't even kill that many people in this movie.
No, he more just injures people. Anyone who who dies is accidental, or they die.
There's several spots in the movie where he even says, he's like, "Look, this guy died. I didn't do it. I want to end this. Let's just stop following me and we'll be fine." He's not like trying to take people out. He's just like, leave me alone. That's his motivation. He's supposed
to be left alone.
Yeah. That's all he's trying to do here. But then he from the very beginning is just being a dick for no reason.
Yeah. And not to mention him, even all the cops.
Even a very young David Caruso in one of his first roles as one of the cops. Which he was the only return because there were some scenes where it seemed like he was being like, oh, hey, we're being too rough on the guy. He's fine. And the next scene, he's like abusing him as much as anybody else. So I'm like, whatever. But yeah, I really like the movie. I like the whole story behind it. I thought the action scenes and the score and the cinematography are all very well done. I mean, this is a movie that wasn't made as a mindless action film. It was made as an action drama, kind of that 70s feel to it, even though it came out in, I think, was it 80, 81? 82, that's right. So it still kind of had that 70s kind of dramatic action feel to it. And I thought it looked good, and I don't know, I just enjoyed it. I will say, and I know you're bring this up, my only thing I didn't like so much about it was the final speech, but I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. I think this was, and I agree, this wasn't started or made or looked at as we're going to make an action franchise out of this. I think this was more Sylvester Stallone coming off of Rocky was like, I want to make a film about and have it about this, Vietnam War vet who's mistreated in a town and it's completely misunderstood. And this is what ends up happening. But he wants to make sure that the seriousness of it and the PTSD and the drama of it is still prevalent in the story. And it's not just a mindless, because this is back when Stallone was still trying to be, well, not trying, he was more prestigious actor Stallone, and not just random, Stallone doing comedy action or just straight up action, like Demolition Man, which we love. But this was more like serious actor Stallone. And honestly, Stallone's, for the most part, not in the movie a whole lot. A lot of this is on Brian Dennehy and Taggart, who plays the officer, the Canadian officer.
Richard Crenna.
What's his name?
Richard Crenna.
No, but I'm talking about his character name. Is it a Taggart?
Oh no, it's hang on over here. It's Troutman, Colonel Troutman.
a lot of it's them just talking with Rambo just out there in the wilderness kind of thing. So like Stallone's not in it as much as you think. He's not the like he's obviously the main character, but he's not in it all like full on. Like you have a lot of time where it's just Dennehy.
It's a pretty even split, yeah.
Yeah, I mean to me, in terms of the Rambo films, I hate the third one. I don't hate the fourth one. Fifth one, I already said what I felt about it. And two, I don't quite remember two that well, which reminds me a lot of Rocky. I don't remember Rocky 2 that well, but I remember like all the rest of the Rockies. But my whole thing is like the motivations for the police. It's just so unwarranted and out of nowhere that it just kind of makes me not necessarily enjoy the film as much. Because like if there was just a drop of dialogue that explains why Dennehy's character is treating Rambo this way and why, like, I get why the other cops are acting that way because Dennehy's doing it, so they want to, do that. But the acting of the other cops is not good.
If there had recently been some crime by some drifter and they thought he might be the guy that murdered somebody in town or something,
Exactly. Just give me one line of dialogue that explains why Dennehy's acting this way towards a random stranger.
He's just a bored small town cop who's like, I want the strangers around here.
Because his very first line is he like cuts in front of him and he's like, you look like you causing trouble walking around wearing that jacket with that on your shoulder, which was the flag.
And the long hair.
Yeah, and the long hair, which his hair's not that long. Calm down. But it's just one of those things where it's like there's no character motivation for why the police mess with him and to go to the extent that they go to. Now, once Rambo defends himself and attacks everyone, okay, yes, they would go that route, but it just kind of puts me in a what's the point of this movie? Like, why is it like, why are they doing this? What's going on? And the performances aren't necessarily that great. My favorite scene of the film is Brian's least favorite scene of the film, which is the very, very end when Stallone really does get to full-on monologue act dramatic about, Vietnam War and his PTSD and stuff, which Brian thinks is over melodramatic. I think it's Stallone finally actually getting to do some actual dialogue and actually get to act. And he's crying at the end of it. And I think, what's his name?
Richard Crenna.
I think his reaction to the story is what makes it work. Now, if he was just stone-faced and just like, whatever, then yeah, it falls. But his reaction to Rambo's story is, to me, what sells the whole thing. And then the movie just kind of ends, which I was like, it's just a weird 80s abrupt ending that like 80s films like to do, where with the weird soundtrack music playing over the frozen image kind of thing. Such an 80s thing. But the action, like I said, it's decent because it's not over the top Rambo. It's more methodical, planned out,
and realistic.
Which I don't think the whole the tree spike thing. I don't think he had enough time to set that up. That's the one I was like, he didn't have that much time to do that. But everything else, yeah, makes sense. And overall, I think it's a decent film. I don't love it as much as everyone else does. If I had to choose between Rocky and Rambo, I'm going to go Rocky 100% of the time. But it's a solid film. I don't think it's as such a classic like everyone makes it out to be, but it definitely is, to me, the best Rambo film of the franchise. But yeah, but like I like the last scene.
Counting the cartoon they made and the toys they put out. The 80s were a weird time, okay, folks?
Exactly. Whereas, like, you can kill people on there.
Yeah, as a kid, I could buy toys for Toxic Avenger and watch the cartoon and Rambo and RoboCop,
God,
and it was
Toxic Avenger. Yeah. That was a whole other character. But yeah, Rambo on anything, or First Blood on anything?
First Blood is currently not available for free anywhere,
which is weird. I would expect that to be somewhere. There's got to be some streaming service that should have like all the Rambos, but apparently not right now. But yeah, guys, that's our show. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekend Crusaders. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, my review for Dune should be out. No, not yet. It wouldn't be out yet. It will be out today because it comes out pretty much right around now on HBO Max, which I'm watching on HBO Max. Brian's gonna go see it in the theater. Also, The French Dispatch comes out, which I said last week. I'm not going to see it. Brian will see it at some
I am,
point.
but I found out it's a very platform release. It's not going to hit me till like November 4th.
Okay, so it's actually a little bit ways
It's,
out.
it's all big cities only this week. So.
And then Ron's Gone Wrong comes out, which the more and more I keep hearing out, and the more and more I'm like, I'll check it out at some point. I'm not going to go to a theater and check it out, mind you. Next week, though, that is when you and I's, if not our number one, it's definitely like our number two or number three most anticipated film of the year comes out. Last Night in Soho. I'm so freaking excited for this. You will be doing a review with me on that one. We will definitely be doing a review for Last Night in Soho. Cannot be any more excited to watch that film. So be on the lookout for that review when it eventually does come around. The horror film Antlers that was supposed to come out like 3 years ago, I think finally is coming out. And then for anyone who's a fan of the Army of the Dead, Army of Thieves comes out on Netflix, which I really don't care.
I'm actually really anxious to see that because I mean,
I love how I defend Army of the Dead to an extent. You hated that film. This one, I can give a rat's ass about. You're like, oh, I want to see that one.
I liked things about Army of the Dead. One of the things I did like was the character of whatever his name is, the safecracker guy.
The German safecracker
guy.
But
then, if there was any question, they put Natalie Emmanuel in there, and I'm sold.
I honestly haven't probably watched. I think I watched the teaser trailer, but I haven't watched like, the actual trailer, and that's why I'm not excited about it. But yeah, I'll check it out. Maybe I'm more just fixated on Last Night in Soho, and I actually
on Netflix. You'll watch it.
Yeah, I kind of want to see Antlers too. But next week, Brian and I will be back again for another 5 movies that come out during that weekend. We've got a thriller that is, in my opinion, fantastic and has
one of the biggest Oscar snubs in recent years.
Yes, I was about to say that. It has got a performance that is, to this day, is one of the biggest Oscar snubs in Oscar history. We've got a animated classic that I have never been a fan of, ever. We'll see if it can make me change my mind. A lot of people say it's a crime that I don't like this film, so we'll see if my mind gets changed on it. We've got a horror comedy that Brian will die on a hill for, saying that it's freaking great, that I have never seen. So I'll have to check that out. We've got another comedy that you and I think both enjoy for the most part for what it is. And then we've got a horror stinker that neither one of us have seen. Is it going to be, on par with Ouija, or is it going to be worse? We'll find out. So figure out what those movies are, and we'll be back next week. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Weekend Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.